Welcome to this week's Youth Central Conversation. You know what I'm like when I get excited, so I'm having to calm myself down because I am genuinely really excited about today's one, and you guys are in for such a treat. This is Caris. Me and Caris went to Moorlands together. We went to uni together. She studied cross-cultural. I studied youth work. Very different, but we were in the same year, and we had some great times. So I'm going to waffle as little as I can today, and I'm just going to go straight over to Caris, and you'll hear me every now and then ask questions. But Caris, tell us who you are, what you do, where you are.
Yeah, cool. I mean, I can't beat that introduction, but I'll try and introduce myself. So I'm Caris, and I currently live in Beirut, which you may have seen a little bit about on the news recently. And I work as basically like a youth ministry advisor for like an organization that works with the persecuted church, particularly in the Middle East and North Africa. So I work as like a youth ministry person who answers questions, gives some advice, kind of that kind of thing, for just a lot of like North Africa and, you know, like the sort of Saudi Arabias and like all those kinds of countries, and then like also sort of for like Syria and Iraq and like all that kind of place as well. So, and it's a lot of fun and I really love doing it. But yeah,
it's a massive area that you cover.
Yeah, it's too big. Like, I'm like, give me like one or two, not like, I think it's like 22 or something like that.
Wow.
Yeah, and it's big, but it's good though. It's very interesting. There's always something different, and like youth ministry is fun everywhere in the world and always looks a bit ridiculous. So that kind of suits me. So it's good.
So tell us a bit about your story. How did you end up where you are now?
Yeah, so I mean, I guess like at Moorlands, you'll have remembered that I mean, I was probably like, I don't know, I think I was probably pretty annoying about the persecuted church and like that kind of thing, and just a bit intense just generally. And then after Moorlands, I ended up with like a 2-month job working for like the UK branch of the organisation that I work for, just like covering their phones and stuff. And then like for some reason, I think they just forgot I was only meant to stay for 2 months, and so I just stayed. And then they ended up giving me other jobs, and I was like working as their like youth coordinator in the UK for a while. And then I like nearly 2 years, like a year and a half ago, I started the role I'm in now, so doing like the youth stuff for the Middle East. So, and in between that time, I like in the last sort of year, got engaged, got married, and then moved sort of in the space of like 6 months, that kind of thing. So it's been quite an eventful, year and a bit, I guess.
Wow. Yeah. Wow. So over the last couple of years then, where you've been working, can you tell us a bit more about what you've done? Any stories that you can tell us? Where have you been?
Yeah, sure. So, what are some of the cool stories? So one of the cool things that I've really enjoyed is getting to work particularly with some of the youth, the Iraqi youth who were displaced by all the stuff that happened with ISIS in 2014, and all kind of were displaced to like another part of Iraq together with their whole youth group and with their whole church. And it's been quite a blessing getting to work with them and getting to sort of get to some of like the roots of kind of what's going on, like working with priests in terms of how you do youth ministry in a crisis and stuff like that, how you like support young people when everything's going wrong, when there's like no one really knows what the future holds and stuff like that. And so that's been, I mean, it's been like hard work, and it's difficult because I think a lot of those young people, they're from like the very traditional churches. They're from churches where you can only like the Bible that they have is in like an ancient Chaldean language. So the Chaldeans are actually mentioned in Genesis. So that's how old like this people group are. Like, so it's pretty nuts and pretty like old school. And that's kind of like a challenge in some ways, but also like there's a lot of super cool like priests and like sort of Orthodox priests and Catholic priests who are like super up for kind of just engaging with youth in a way that's better, like you know, working with them to use like Instagram Live and stuff like that. So I've got like one priest who absolutely loves like the bunny ears filters and does all of his like youth sermons like with that on for like the whole time, which is just amazing to see, just like someone in like their full priest robes with like bunny ears on. So that's a huge highlight of my job. One of the other things that has been a real privilege, so in like one of the countries in North Africa, a lot of the churches were closed down last year, and it had a huge youth group. And just like the week before all the churches were closed down, I was helping lead a training with them on like how to prepare for persecution and how to kind of prepare for difficulties and like what to do when when you're persecuted for your faith, essentially. And, you know, a lot of them, they've had like church closures in the past, but a lot of them were kind of like, oh, that's not going to happen again, really. Like, you know, we're in a pretty good place here and that kind of thing. And so when that happened, we weren't sure how it would go, but it was the youth group who, like, just without any fear, were just on the streets. They were protesting the authorities for arresting their pastors and for closing down their churches. And it was like the youth groups going straight to like the council, straight to the government buildings, doing these like sit-ins and stuff like that, basically just like defending their churches and their right to worship and stuff like that. So yeah, things like that have been pretty cool. And yeah, like those are the kinds of things that have really made me like just, you know, make you just feel alive in the job that you do. So yeah.
Wow, it's that so exciting. So in the situation that you're in now, how do you disciple to those people that you work with? What do you do that maybe the people that are watching could take from and either do themselves or does that make sense?
I think so. So
what do you do to disciple the people that you work with?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that like is probably pretty universal for all young people and all people generally, like I'm not going to single out young people in this, is that people really just want to be heard. And this is a culture where a lot of space isn't always given for that. And the way that youth ministry has been done historically here is that you're basically just preached at and you're told what to do and you're told what's good and you're told what's bad. And if you do that bad thing, then you're going to be like ashamed and you're going to bring shame on all of us, is basically like the kind of tone of a lot of like youth ministry here, sadly. So I think one of the things that like I kind of want to see other people do, or I want to see youth pastors and like people working with young people in this region more do, is just kind of give that space to listen well without kind of immediately start preaching, without like immediately kind of giving advice and that kind of thing. And also just engaging with a lot of the brokenness, a lot of the rubbish, and not kind of glassing over that, because a lot of the things, sometimes life is just a bit rubbish and that happens, but actually you need to give space for that, and you need to kind of bring hope into that as well, because I mean there's a lot of different things going on in this region for like younger people, for like people in their like under 30, that kind of thing. You know, there's a lot of like unemployment, there's a lot of just instability, there's always a threat of war coming from somewhere, so no one really knows what the future holds, and that can feel really like, I mean that can feel crippling. I feel like a lot of us maybe in the UK, you guys know what that feels with a lot of this time with like COVID-19 and stuff like that, like you don't know what the world's going to look like, and so that can be quite difficult sometimes. But actually, like, you know, really engaging with what does hope look like when we're Christians, what does hope look like when we have Jesus, you know, what does hope in the Bible look like, this kind of thing. And so that's, I guess that's one of the things that we've kind of been engaging with recently, just in terms of the situation, but also what's kind of been happening in the region for years, I would say.
So in an area and in a world where it's tough to be a Christian, it's not easy. So for someone like yourself that's come from the UK, how do you find discipling yourself? So you and your husband, what do you do for church? What does it look like for you? And like quiet time and worship, how does that work?
So I mean, for me, like I find making it a routine when the rest of life feels quite chaotic helps me quite a bit, just finding something that's constant, and particularly if it's Bible reading. I really love that. one of the things I also find really helpful, which may not be for everyone, but so the Orthodox Church, they use prayer beads, and they use like 33 beads. And one of the things that I just found really helpful is like 11 of those beads, just kind of praying through them and listing reasons why I'm really glad to be alive today, and just thanking God for that. And then the next like 11 beads, just being like, okay, these are the reasons why I'm really glad that Jesus is my savior today. These are the things I love about Jesus. And then finding like 11 things like that I just need to leave in the hands of the Holy Spirit, basically, that like I just need to pray into, that I just need to leave with God, that like things that are needs. And I actually learned that from persecuted Christians, so particularly from Christians who'd been like in prison. And this one guy, this was like in Russia a long time ago, but like he was asked, like he said, like you can have one thing to take with you into prison, and he said, I want to take these prayer beads in. And that was what he did, and that was how he kind of stayed alive during a very difficult time for 5 years. So that's what he did every day, and that for me has really helped me, particularly in difficulty. And I mean, our church is like a pretty international one here. Obviously, we've been meeting on Zoom just like you guys, in the UK as well. But I think one of the most powerful times of worship that we've had recently, so you'll probably have seen on the news that there was a huge explosion in Beirut 2 days ago. And so this is why we have these new plastic windows in our house. But after the blast happened, and we were still in shock, we were still sweeping up rubble, we were still sweeping up glass. If I see another shard of glass, I'm going to lose my mind. Like, it was just, you know, these floor to ceiling windows, they're great, but not when there's an explosion. And so, but one of the things that we did, like my husband just put on like some worship music, and we just sang as we like cleaned up. And for me, that was just very moving, because it just really helped to just be proclaiming God's goodness and just proclaiming his faithfulness and singing all these songs that just speak of that, and are just reminders of that. You know, like I think the thing about worship is it's not just an amazing thing because like we're worshiping God and we're telling him how good he is, but we're also telling ourselves that. And for me, I think that's what's been really impactful in the last couple of days particularly. Yeah.
That's amazing. So that's incredible. So you just touched on it. So with everything that's happened in Beirut a couple of days ago, can you tell us a bit of the story about that? So what's the last, like, where were you when it happened? What were you like? Just give us a bit of an update about what's now.
Yeah. So as I was telling you earlier, Sam, so it was the weirdest thing, because we had planned on meeting a friend right next to the port where the blast was that day. And but both me and my husband, we suddenly felt super ill, like really random, really out of the blue. And normally, like, we're in our lounge here, like when we're at home, because it's just like a slightly bigger room, that kind of thing. But for some reason, like, I was just like feeling so unwell, I needed to just be in bed. So I was in bed. Steve, because he's he's a nice husband, so he was making me food in the kitchen. And then that was when the blast happened, basically. And like there was actually like a smaller one first. So I don't know if many of you have seen some of the videos of the blast, like there was sort of smoke at first because there was a smaller explosion. And I heard that, but I wasn't feeling great. So I was like, I'm sure I'll find out what that was later, because that one didn't really sound as loud. But then the second one, like I thought a bomb had hit our house. Like it was so huge, like the whole place shook. I could just hear glass smashing. I thought the whole place was going to come down on us. Like it was just so loud. And then so we ran out, like I was just screaming for Steve. Like Steve was in the kitchen completely unscathed. Our bedroom was completely unscathed. It was only our lounge where like everything came in, basically, which was pretty insane. And then we came out and just saw that actually it was something like 5 kilometers away. Like we just saw this huge red cloud rising up into the sky, basically. And so this was a very surreal moment. Like I've been in some situations where I've seen bombs go off and stuff like that, but nothing to this level, nothing this sort of like of this magnitude. So for us, it was quite like a shaking experience. We were pretty shocked. And I think it just sort of seeing this city that we live in, that we love, where like we've got loads of favorite places where we go out to eat, where we meet friends, and all of that's gone now. Like that's been quite a lot to process, and it still doesn't feel real yet, if I'm honest. But yeah.
So So what's happening now? So
so there's a lot. They're still pulling people out of rubble, they're still pulling bodies out of the rubble, they're still finding survivors, which is pretty amazing. But there's been huge like asks for like donating blood and stuff like that, but when we've tried to go, like the hospitals have been so full to capacity that they don't actually have a spare hand to get someone to like, you know, help us give blood, that kind of thing, because they just, every hand is on deck looking after wounded people at the moment, really. So yeah, so it's a challenge. I know there are groups also who are like organizing like distributing food, distributing water, that kind of thing. I don't, like, you may not know this, but like Beirut's been in a huge like kind of catastrophic state for like months now. So like I'm like not going to give anyone an economics lesson, partly because I don't understand economics, but basically like the local currency has lost 80% of its value, which basically means that like no one's salary has changed, but like food in shops and like really basic things are like 5 times, 6 times more expensive than they used to be. So no one can really afford a lot. A lot of people can't really afford to live. On our street a few weeks ago, like so the Middle East, like you might think of it as like a dangerous place in some ways, but in some ways it's very like safe in that you don't get petty crime because everyone knows each other. And so like no one would normally like mug anyone or like do anything like that, because there'd be all these like Middle Eastern old ladies looking at you kind of, and you don't want to like, and no one wants to mess with them. So kind of, so, you know, that's always been quite safe, but there have been a few muggings here recently. Not even for like, they're literally just people just like crying, just being like, all I want is food to feed my kids. They're just crying from hunger. I'm really sorry to be doing this. I'm really sorry that I'm holding a gun to you, like, but we've got no other option. So this is the kind of thing that was going on before the blast. And so now, like, when you think people were living in that situation, but at least they had homes, now there's literally nothing left. There's literally nothing to fall back on. Our only means of importing stuff, the port, is now destroyed. So there's no way to even like, there's been a shortage of food, a shortage of medicine, a shortage of everything even before this. And now there's absolutely nothing left and no way to get anything in. So it's in a really desperate situation here. And I mean, we've seen a lot of amazing things in terms of churches and Christian organizations locally who are doing really great things, who like, you know, Bible colleges here have just like opened up. Like first, like during the COVID crisis, they opened up their beds for like essential workers and stuff to stay in and self-isolate. And now like a lot of them have opened up just to take in people for free. Like all the hotels have opened up to take in people for free, like who've lost their homes, all the hotels that have kind of still standing, that kind of thing. So yeah, so you see, I mean, in all of these things, you do see like the goodness of humanity, but it's also like this whole thing is a huge reminder of actually really deep, widespread corruption that's actually caused so much chaos for so many years. So yeah, I hope that's coherent. That's just a little bit of what.
No, that makes so much sense.
Okay.
So what can we be praying for? What can we be praying for? What can we be doing? Because when this happens, you get the pictures saying pray for the country, and you got your Instagram accounts that post about what's happening and what's going on and stuff like that. So like for me, I was chatting to someone earlier and I said, this is surreal because I actually know somebody in the situation, whereas with other situations, you can kind of detach yourself. So what can we be praying for you and for the area, and what can we do?
Yeah, I mean, I think my main prayer for this whole country is because I think my first fear when I heard the blast was that a war had started, because there'd been rumours of that. There's always rumours of everything here. But actually, like, my prayer is that actually this wouldn't start a war. Like, it could, but that it wouldn't. But actually, like, this would be something that's just a real turning point in the country, that this would actually, like, cleanse the country of corruption. That this would actually be something where, like, you know, internationally, like, countries will suddenly be like, actually, like, we need to do something here, like we can't just sort of leave it keep collapsing. So my prayer is that actually, like, this would be the thing that turns things around. This would be like the final straw that turns things around there. My prayer for us, I guess, for peace, that we're able to kind of process all of this, but also that we're able to just be a blessing to our community here. Like, we've got loads of friends who've been injured, loads of friends whose like houses have been completely destroyed, so that we'd be able to be like a blessing here would be good. I think for me it's been hard to think of like prayer points specifically, because it almost seems like there's just so many, but yeah, I feel like those would be the specific ones to do right now. Yeah.
Amazing. So final question before we go. What, if you, from your work that you do and from the people that you work with, what's one piece of advice you could give to the people watching about their discipleship and their journey? Pick out from. It's a big question, so take your time.
That is a big question. I mean, one of the things that we just see over and over again, because I mean, like in the Middle East, like it's not always, I mean, there's always some kind of crisis going on, but not everything is a crisis situation. But we see in the crisis situations, like suddenly people's faith becomes really real to them and it's amazing. But then as soon as things get better, sometimes like you can trail off a little bit after that. And so, I mean, I don't know how, like what faith has looked like for people in COVID. I don't know how you've sort of, what your relationship with God has been like, but I think one of the things that I always think is actually like, you know, God's the same in every situation. God's holding us in every situation. Like I believe that God like miraculously protected us 2 days ago, like when we should have been right by the blast zone. And if we'd gone for a drink with our friend, we'd be dead. If we'd been in the lounge, we'd be wounded. I think, and actually like for me, it's just so overwhelming that God's love for us isn't just in those moments, but it's in like every single situation of our lives, wherever we are, wherever we go. And this love is just as real in these difficult times as it is in the easy times as well. And like sometimes that can be quite hard to remember when kind of things go back to normal. And you know, like there's this kind of quote where like from someone in like the organization I work for who says, you know, I see many Christians survive persecution, but not many who survive prosperity. And actually like it's that kind of idea that actually there's like so many other things that can rob your faith, not just hard times, but actually like good times when we just stop fixing our eyes on him. So I guess that would be my takeaway from like, I don't know, life or whatever's going on at the moment. But yeah,
that was great. That to me, and I'm sure that's spoken to many people watching. Thank you so much for this.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Like,
I didn't know what to do. I cleaned up my apartment and then was just like, oh, like what do I do now? I've done that. It's been really nice.
Genuinely, it's been so good, and we'll get in contact again, and we will get you on Zoom again with some people, and so it's not just me and you.
Anytime.
Yeah.
Great. Not that I've not enjoyed the just me and you. That's been great.
No, I know it's been a lovely catch up.
Yeah.
But thank you very much.
Pleasure.
We'll see you soon.
Yeah. See you guys. Bye.